everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about We Wish You a Messy Christmas by Melody Carlson. So, this one, it's a contemporary fiction novella, so it's a Christmas novella, and it fits within the Christian fiction category, and it's a standalone story. So, why did I want to read this one? Well, I've enjoyed reading books by Melody in the past, and I've recorded 3 episodes here at Fangirling on her books. Plus, I've got recommendations at my blog that you can find at narelleatkins.com. So, I've recorded episode 4 on Welcome to the Honey Bee and Bee, and episode 55 on All Booked Up, and they're full-length novels. And then last year, I recorded episode 29, which was Melody's Christmas novella last year. So for many years, she's been doing a novella every year. I just love her novellas. And that episode 29 is on Once Upon a Christmas Carol. And I'm going to add my usual disclaimer and say many thanks to the publisher who provided an advance reader copy, and all the opinions that I express in this episode are completely my own. Now, I'm very excited. I have a giveaway. I've got one print copy for a reader with a USA mailing address, and the details on how to enter I'll talk about at the end of the episode. So let's talk about the book. We Wish You a Messy Christmas by Melody Carlson is set in a small town in Oregon. So this one's a Christmas novella, and it's got all that lovely small town charm I just love with Christmas stories. We have feuding families who happen to be next door neighbors, and they've lived next door to each other for a couple of decades. We have an ensemble cast of characters, so we have multiple viewpoint characters in the story. We have a romance, and that relationship is very much under pressure because our leading lady in the romance, her mother is a difficult person, and there's a whole lot of issues connected to why her mother may not approve of this relationship. And this particular mother also is sitting in a marriage that's in a little bit of trouble as well. We have that going on. So there's a lot of family drama in this story. And we have women's fiction issues. We have mental health issues that are looked at, and also obsessive compulsive disorder. And apart from all those heavy themes, this is a light-hearted, fun romance novella. So there's humor in the story that made me laugh. We've got funny moments and some rom-com elements, and it has all those Christmas vibes that I just love. So I'm going to share the first line with you, which is this one. Olivia Bradshaw released a loud groan as she dropped her shopping bags inside the apartment. So this is Olivia, and we're in chapter 1 in the book, and she lives in Salem, which is a city in Oregon that I've actually visited in person. It's very exciting when I read a book and I'm like, yes, I've actually been to that setting, even though I'm an Aussie and lives on the other side of the world. Yeah, so Olivia's talking to her roommate, and she's talking about how she has mixed feelings about the upcoming Christmas season because she's just been Christmas shopping. And so Olivia's in her late 20s, and as I said, she lives in the city. She hasn't lived at home for 10 years. And at the start of the story, she has a new boyfriend, Malcolm, and he's a veterinarian and works in town in Salem. And they actually grew up together next door, although he's a couple of years older than her, and she was friends, I think, with his younger sisters. And so they were neighbors who, quite by chance, reconnected at his workplace at the vet clinic. And then that's where their romance has started from. And so we have Olivia, who's just dreading Christmas, and that's because she has a very difficult mother. She loves her mother. She's very, very close to her father, who she loves and adores, and she's an only child, and they have a very close bond, her and her dad. And they're both struggling with their mum, and I'm going to get to that now because her mother's name is Jane, and she's the other main character in the story. And Jane would be in her late 50s or early 60s approximately, and she's been married to Rob, that's Olivia's father, for 37 years, and he's an accountant, and Jane was a stay-at-home mum who's been an empty nester now for 10 years since Olivia went to college. And at the start of the story, Jane looks like from the outside she has this amazing, perfect life. She's got this gorgeous home. It's immaculate. It's been completely renovated. Everything's in its place. She's surrounded by beautiful things, and she prides herself on her appearance. So she's a very good-looking, beautiful woman, and she dresses really well and looks after herself, and she's healthy, and is pretty much her appearance is very important to her, and it's quite a prideful thing in many ways. And she prides herself on having her life perfect, and she really is seeking perfection. But at the same time, and she has some very lovely traits, and she's a very interesting character. She's also very judgmental and intolerant of other people, especially if they're messy. She just cannot stand mess at all in any way, shape, or form. And that's dirt mess as well as clutter mess. So the cleanliness and the spick and span nature of her house is incredibly important to her. And she's also quite self absorbed, and she can't see how her attitudes and her desire for perfection is impacting her husband and daughter, for example. And she's also, although she'd never admit this, she's effectively estranged from her mother. She has massive issues with her mother, and we learn about the emotional baggage that she has from her childhood as the story progresses. And she's effectively excluded her mother from her life. So, for example, she has no plans of inviting her mother to be with them, the family at Christmas, even though her mother gets on very well with her husband and daughter. So we have a lot of problems in this story. And so Jane's extreme perfectionism, it causes problems with every relationship in her life. There's no one that can easily get along with her unless they appease her and indulge her control freak nature, for want of a better word. And so Olivia's romance with Malcolm is so sweet. He happens to be the son of Jane and Rob's next door neighbors. And Jane has a real problem with her next door neighbors. And they're a large family, they're very close, quite boisterous and fun. And Jane cannot stand them and cannot stand the mess. And Olivia doesn't want to end up in a situation where she has to choose between Malcolm and her mother. And that's where she's feeling at the start of the story. And so she hasn't told her parents about Malcolm because she's really worried about how her mum's going to react. And she's really, really worried that her mum is going to scare Malcolm away and break them up. And so we also have mental health issues that are looked at in the story, particularly in terms of Jane with this extreme perfectionism streak that she has. And Rob, that's Jane's husband, does actually think that it's possible that Jane could have obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's something that does get explored in the story because some of the traits that Jane is exhibiting could be OCD. So as the story progresses, we have a whole lot of things that go wrong, which absolutely drive Jane. She's beside herself and totally distressed by what happens. And that complicates Christmas. And so the big question is, how can they all navigate Christmas and manage and deal with Jane at the same time? So I absolutely love this story, as I always love Melody's Christmas novellas. The characters, there was so much emotional depth, and we really got to see what was going on with a number of characters in the story who were dealing with different things. And we've got major family drama as well, and problems with the neighbors that are pretty much all caused by Jane, who just can't get along with anybody. And we have that lovely, charming small town setting in Oregon with potentially snow at Christmas and all those fun things. And Jane's story was really quite interesting. And it was interesting to gain an understanding of why she is the way she is. And that's all I'm going to say because I'm not going to give away spoilers. And Olivia and Malcolm, they just had such a sweet romance. These two are just really cute. And Olivia's dilemma is that she has such a complex relationship with her mum, and she loves her mum, but she also wants to live her own life and not be controlled by her mother, because if she does something that her mother doesn't approve of and agree with, she feels really guilty, and the emotional boundaries are just a mess between the pair of them. And her mother just really hasn't let go of her daughter, and that's something that will get addressed in the story. And we have some delightful side characters that I just loved. And there's quite a few of them that are really walking their faith and living their faith in the story. And they do help each other out. And I really appreciated how they'd all band together to support each other. And the grandma. So Jane's mother, which is Olivia's grandmother, Grandma Lulu, was just hilarious. I just loved her. She was such a fun character. And I loved the ending and how all the problems and issues in the story tied up. It was just wonderful. And I closed the book with a smile on my face. So my favorite book quote in the story is this one. But sometimes drastic situations call for drastic measures. And this is Olivia who's talking with her dad, and they're discussing the problem of mum and what they're going to do with mum at Christmas. And the status quo just isn't working for them. Rob is very unhappy in his marriage, and He's looking to retirement and thinking, can I really cope with retiring and having to be at home 24/7 with Jane? Or is she going to drive me around the twists? Because he very much enjoys the time he has away from Jane, which is a problem that Jane isn't actually aware of in the story. And then, of course, Olivia is trying to work out how she's going to manage her mum with Malcolm's situation. And they both acknowledge that something needs to change. And we find out what changes as the story progresses. And so I describe this one as having strong and relevant faith elements. Life is messy and people aren't perfect. And that's very much a takeaway that we get from this story, is that it doesn't matter how hard Jane strives for perfection, she's never ever going to be perfect because she's a flawed and human being who makes mistakes like the rest of us. And God's idea of perfection is also very different to Jane's idea of perfection. And so she goes on a bit of a learning curve with this, as do all the other characters in the story. And we also have trusting God and letting go is one of the themes that's explored, and not having to control everything as well, that it's okay to let God be in control because he's God. And we also have forgiveness themes that are looked at. And another thing I really loved is how loving your neighbor, even when they're not lovable, is something that's explored in the story as well. And that relates to the side characters. And I just loved how that all played out. So, in terms of the impact on me, there were lots of smiles, and I was laughing out loud at different times because there's some quite funny and humorous moments that happen in this book. And at the same time, there's some very poignant moments because we've got some characters like Jane who are dealing with some pretty major issues as well, and have quite a steep learning curve and character growth curve in the story. And it also made me think about perfectionism and control and the reasons for why people do what they do as well. So, and why, and that can make a big difference as well. So, is to actually, if you can understand why someone's doing what they're doing, it can make it easier to empathize with them as well, if it's appropriate to do that. And we also, in the story, I really thought about healthy boundaries in relationships, and that's mother-daughter relationships. That's also spouse relationships and relationships with family and neighbors, and why it's important to actually think about how your behavior affects other people. And the other thing that I really appreciated in this story was it really looked at the importance of calling out bad behavior and inappropriate behavior, but calling it out in a way that was appropriate for the circumstances and situation, and loving and supportive of the person who has issues that need to be addressed. And the sensitivity that Melody had with the way she wrote this story, I just loved. And I'm not saying any more because I don't want to say what happens and spoil it, but it was beautifully written and I really appreciated it. So, in summary, I recommend We Wish You a Messy Christmas to readers who like small town Christmas novellas and feuding families that are next door neighbours, to readers who like the ensemble cast of characters and includes a lovely sweet romance, to readers who like family drama on steroids. There is so much family dysfunction and drama in this little novella. And we also have women's fiction themes that are explored with the mental health issues. And to readers who like Christmas novellas that have those laugh out loud funny rom-com vibes, and also novellas that have the strong faith elements that look at trust and forgiveness themes as well. Thanks for joining me today. Does We Wish You a Messy Christmas sound like a novella that you'd like to read? Have you read it? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening at the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching at YouTube, you can like the episode at YouTube and or leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me at my website where I've got a contact form, and you'll find that at narelleatkins.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, and you can do that at your favorite podcasting app, or you can subscribe at YouTube, and then you get a notification on when my next episode drops. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the link with a friend, especially a friend who enjoys reading Christmas novellas and a friend who you think would enjoy reading Melody's books. Now, let's talk about the giveaway. I'm very excited. I've got one print copy of We Wish You a Messy Christmas to a reader who has a USA mailing address. And the giveaway will close on September 16th. So that's the 16th of September 2026, USA West Coast time. time. And the link to get enter the giveaway will be in the show notes. So thanks for tuning in and see you next time.